Now, a lot of layers of the onion to peel back here. First of all, the first one is like, why the fuck is Vitaly TV making a comeback? Okay. I don't know. If you don't know who Vitaly is, he's one of the OG. He's like the OG prankster. The OG of OG pranksters, early YouTube days, kind of like FouseyTube era. Basically a dickhead, just a real dickhead. He made quite a name for himself. His YouTube channel has, 10 million subscribers. It was dead for a long time, but I mean, he's done everything from like, I think he was like directing porn for a minute, and just no stone was left unturned in his pursuit for, clicks and revenue and notoriety, whatever it is. And as that goes, this, and like same with FouseyTube, like these guys, they make millions and millions of dollars, and then they're just so tapped that they have a way of essentially crashing and burning and losing it all. And from what I understand, he was in a tough spot, mainly because one of the reasons why he's a piece of shit, you guys probably know, like several years ago now, is it 4 or 5 years ago, he got arrested for randomly assaulting a female jogger. And I never looked into like how that case resolved or why it even happened. And I mean, there's pictures. If you look at pictures of this chick, this was years ago, but she got banged up hard. And I guess the story is in the weirdest, the way I learned about this story today and looking it up, I'm like, why did he end up doing that? I got taken to a r/shrooms subreddit because it was like people that are trying to do shrooms that were like, I heard Vitaly was tripping really bad and he like beat the shit out of this random female stranger. I want to make sure that doesn't happen to me. I'm like, what the? So the story is that like he was just fucked up on drugs, basically. I don't think shrooms would make you do this, but what do I know? Maybe it was bath salts, and he just randomly, this woman was jogging, just jogging by herself, and he I don't know if they had an interaction beforehand, just beat the piss out of her. And of course, that was huge news at the time. He gets arrested. So, like, I don't know how much money the settlement was or whatever it was, but he ended up apparently, like he was facing deportation because he's not a U.S. citizen, from what I understand, natural born, obviously. But eventually, I learned this on the Roman Atwood podcast when he was on, I don't know, like a year ago or something like that. He settled with this woman out of court. Their lawyers reached a settlement. I don't think he's ever talked about how much it was, but all the charges were dropped. So I don't know if that's how he like lost all of his money or whatever. But all that's to say that he is now back with a Kick deal. I think Steve will do it somehow. Had something to do with it. Steve obviously being on Kick, or not. I think he posts most of his videos on X, but he probably gambles on Kick and shit. I don't know. Kick is an interesting place, man. It's like all of the dejected degenerates that have been left behind by other platforms where they're not allowed all seem to culminate on Kick. And, I understand there is an element of entertainment to these dudes and what they do, but a lot of these guys like Vitaly, just in my opinion, are just real pieces of shit. People I wouldn't want to associate with. So now his new thing is he's like a pedo hunter and he does these episodes. And of course, like pedo hunting is like, I mean, it's been around forever. Chris Hansen, How to Catch a Predator. It's an interesting form of entertainment because it feels like vigilante justice. It's cheap in the sense that everyone can get behind trying to wreck a pedo, right? Like, someone who's legitimately trying to meet up with a really, like a child in a sexual way. Like, I'm of the mindset that like, yeah, just throw them in the wood chipper. Sure. But on the flip side of that, it's like Vitaly, I'm not sure that he gives a single shit about whether there is or is not a pedo involved or if he's trying to take one off the street. He only has one singular goal of getting views and making money. So like, and he's just like a master of doing every single vertical and genre of content that can best manipulate people's emotions, and like being the next pedo hunter is like, that's his thing, and it's working. And he recently had Bradley Martin, who I like Bradley Martin in many respects. I respect him as a content creator. I've heard some interesting things from him, but he's built quite an empire for himself. He's a huge, fitness guy, all juiced to the gills, absolutely jacked out of his tits. But he's been very involved in the podcast scene with the Nelk Boys, and he's made quite a name for himself. He owns Raw Gear. He has a gym out in LA. Blah, blah, blah. But I enjoy some of the stuff he says. And I've watched some of his podcasts. And when he was on the Nelk Boys podcast, sometimes I thought he was more insightful than like Steiny or just a lot of the Nelk guys that don't really offer much besides being like a side show like Steiny. Actually, Kyle's okay. But anyways, the most insightful, and I thought asked the best questions. I thought he was definitely the best host on that. And he does a pretty good job on his podcast as well. That's to say, he linked up with Vitaly. They did